the Hake Report, the Hake Report, la la la. Oh, it's the Hake Report, the Hake Report, la la la.
How do you like this new theme music? This is the Hake Report with James Hake, no longer with Joel and Esteban. I'm sorry to say. Hope you like it.
The Hake Report, the Hake Report, la la la. Oh, it's the Hake Report, the Hake Report, la la la.
Hey guys, this is the Hake Report. I'm James Hake, filling in by myself on the Hake Report. And I don't know why that music is playing. Sorry about that, guys. So, it's just me today, and it's going to be just me from here on out hosting the Hake Report. I may get a couple of, like, a co-host or two down the line, but I'm branching out on my own, no longer with Joel and Esteban. And it is so sad because it was really nice talking with Joel and Esteban, getting to know the way they think. They're so, like, innocent and genuine and like free thinking, and they don't know a lot about politics, which is refreshing in a way because they don't think that they know stuff, which is a trap that a lot of us fall into when we are presenting information, acting like we know sometimes. I don't know about we. I sometimes do that. I've caught myself doing that. So you can call in at 888-775-3773, 888-77-JESSE. And yes, Jesse still is the executive producer of the Hake Report, no longer with Joel and Esteban. And Jesse offered me the choice of, since these guys are leaving, do I want to stay or do I want to go? And I remember watching Bill O'Reilly one time, and Bill O'Reilly said, when you are presented with an opportunity, you take it. And so that's what I'm doing, is taking this opportunity. And so hello to everybody in the live chat. I will be trying to peek at your comments.
You're on.
Okay, I think I am back on the stream, and I'm not sure.
No. Pause.
I'm just going to keep on talking here and there so that people can see me. All right, am I back live? Let me know if I am back live, everybody. I think I'm back live. Tell me if I'm live, because I want to do it live. So, flying solo, does everybody hear me? Can you hear me? It's not a sign. No, Ryan, it's not a sign. So, I want to talk about being and doing things alone, success, and what causes people to fail, as well as Jesse's biblical question. Jesse had a very, very interesting biblical question. Jesse Lee Peterson, if you don't know, he had this biblical question this week that sparked the most calls of anything that you've seen, well, that you've heard. And that question was, what was it? It was, how do you know you've been born again? And Jesse, if you don't know, he was on Newsmax TV all 3 hours, all last week, except for Christmas Day, obviously. And he sparked so many first-time callers, and they were talking about their understanding of Christianity, which I don't understand Christianity, so I don't really know the answer to that question. And it's tough to consider these questions because they're so simple and basic, and you don't know what to think, what is true. And so if you liked Jesse's answer, he gave this answer on Friday to the biblical question, you can chime in about that as well. So being alone and getting things done, there are pluses and minuses to this. And one of the main pluses is you get to be totally independent. So in a way, I'm free of Joel and Esteban, those innocent little creatures who were holding me back. And in a way, it's kind of sad because those guys were actually helping out by giving really nice opinions and adding some interest visually, because now you're just seeing me on the screen, but before you were able to see all of them, and they had interesting expressions. But I have some pictures that I'm able to show you too. If I present a news report, I can have my engineer throw on a picture onto the screen, and you can look at them. So you have more freedom and more independence, but dealing with people, I noticed that dealing with my co-hosts was a little tougher than just doing my own thing, because I had to go through them and make sure that they were okay with what I was doing. And so that's one of the flaws of like a partnership, where you're not really able to do your thing. And so that's why I don't really like partnerships, but I've seen co-hosts do really great stuff, and there's some really popular podcasts. I'm thinking of one where it was like 3 co-hosts of a podcast, 3 guys who were in Obama's White House, and it's called like Pod Save America or something like that. And they have a very, very, very popular podcast because there's a lot of people who like that type of stuff, which is, to me, is gross, but at the same time, they're co-hosts and they made it work. So this is just me, and I'm looking for new guests to come on the show, new possible co-hosts, but we shall see. I wanted to talk about my interview with AJ and the misunderstandings between human beings when you're talking about politics, religion, anything like serious or important, because you can be totally cool with people until you touch on those topics. And that's why they're banned from bars and things like that. Bars say, no politics or religion talking about here. Otherwise you get thrown out, because it's a volatile topic, liable to start a fight. And I noticed like a slight bit of tension with AJ when I was asking him stuff, and I couldn't really get him to disagree with me. He just kind of dodged it and said, I have friends who are such and such. They're Mexican or whatever. And I was talking to AJ, if you missed last week, about Trump. Wasn't Trump right to want to kick out the illegal aliens and point out the truth that Mexico is sending drugs, crime, rapists, and some presumably good people? And he said, yeah, I'm Mexican, and I live in a Mexican area. And what that's kind of telling me is that he doesn't want to get his butt kicked, pardon my language, by his friends. And that makes me wonder, why do you not have a problem disagreeing with me? And that's because I'm not going to kick anybody's butt for disagreeing with me. But I do kind of get nasty sometimes. I admit I am guilty of that. For example, on Twitter just today, did you hear the news? Erica Garner, the daughter of Eric I Can't Breathe Garner, she died at age 27. She just had a baby in August. After that, what happened to her? She had a heart attack or something. She had an enlarged heart, and she just died like yesterday or so. And somebody who shared her Twitter account, maybe a family member or something, said to the reporters, please do not reach out to us for comment unless you are black. And so they only want to talk to black reporters. And that's because they believe in the black thing. And I said, that's fine. They have that right, because you have a right to talk to whoever you want to talk to, reporters or otherwise. And you have a right to discriminate against people as an individual, as an American, and as a human being. You have that right of discrimination. It's a basic, fundamental human right to discriminate. And I said also that racism doesn't exist, because they were claiming that that's racist for them to say, we only want to talk to a black reporter. So if racism existed, yeah, you would say that is racist. But racism does not exist, and therefore it's neither. It may be right, it may be wrong, but they have the right to do that. So there you have it. But people jumped on me. They're like, "This is so insane and stupid. Discrimination is not a human right. What about the 14th Amendment? The 14th Amendment says equal protection under the law. The government cannot discriminate against you on the basis of race, etc." And I said, but that's the government. The individuals, human beings, have the right to discriminate. And so, yeah, some of you guys saw this tweet, Bategs900, and I just kind of got sucked into it, sucked into arguments, and it's like really a battle of pride with these people. And one guy is like, "I have studied colonial racial stuff, and so therefore you can't beat me on this topic." And he ended up muting me because like he accused me of moving the goalposts, which means changing your definitions, I guess, or something like that. But I wasn't changing my definitions. I was not saying that like ethnic cleansing has never happened or whatever you call it. And I wasn't saying that slavery never happened. I said that slavery was not racist. But I got sucked into that battle where it became a literal battle of like pride and hatred rather than simply pointing out and then just letting these people go on and believe what they're going to believe because you're not going to change their mind. So that kind of happened with my friendships, where, especially on social media, you get real brave. I don't know about you. I get real brave on social media. And so, like, I'll say stuff and, like, call people out and all that stuff and get kind of up on my high horse and hoity-toity and self-righteous and accuse them of stuff that may be true. But in person, I probably wouldn't do it. And also, furthermore, like, it became like a battle of egos. And so a lot of friends, liberals, maybe some conservatives, but mainly liberals, have blocked me, deleted me, won't associate with me, talk crap about me behind my back, according to others, and things like that. And so has anybody lost friendships? And I want to point out there's another news story of somebody who's going through this, in my opinion. Yeah, being judgmental. I'm being very judgmental. I want to point out, I don't know if you're familiar with this guy named Paul Nealon. Paul Nealon is basically he's a wannabe politician. He wants to become an elected official. And he was supported by Breitbart and others. He's written for Breitbart. But Breitbart recently had to dissociate themselves from him because he tweeted that he started tweeting like crazy stuff, like maybe not even necessarily that crazy of stuff, but alt-right friendly stuff. And alt-right, if you're not familiar, much of the alt-right blames Jewish people for whites losing their country. And so Paul Nealon started tweeting, he tweeted about this book by a man named Kevin McDonald, who has been on Jesse's show. And Kevin admitted that he got angry when he found out that our politicians started bringing in all kinds of immigrants to change the political power in this country, take it away from whites who, majority of whites tend to be conservative, and give the political power by way of numbers to immigrants who, whether they start out conservative, their children become more and more and more liberal. And that's partly because of the education and the mass media culture and all that stuff. And he got mad about that, this guy, Kevin McDonald. And he started blaming Jewish people. And so Paul Nealon is on this kick now. And Paul Nealon is saying stuff like, oh, just asking questions. If being pro-white is white supremacist, then what is being pro-Jewish? Is that Jewish supremacist? And obviously you can't be doing that because that is signaling a resentment towards Jewish people, a resentment towards the current situation. And one thing that's a bad situation for many whites who are joining the alt-right, as well as many normal people, whites, others who hate the media, who hate the politicians, but who just feel helpless to the situation that our country is in, where we're so degraded. The problem is being mad about it. You cannot get sucked into that pride, that anger, that resentment, that hatred toward, whether it's toward the media or toward Jewish people or toward blacks or toward whites, toward women. But that's what human beings get sucked into, and evil is so good at sucking people into that wickedness. And so Paul Nealon is going out. Maybe he doesn't hate them, but I don't think that he knows what he's doing. He's really making himself look bad by acting as though Breitbart betrayed him by disassociating themselves from him, because they have the right to disassociate themselves from him because he switched on them. And when you switch on somebody, you can't hold it against them for switching on you in return. And so that's like one of the things that I've had to learn, where I have lost a lot of friends. I'm like, they're not my friends anyway. They're being dumb. But I'm the one who switched on them because I used to just pretend to be nice, stayed quiet about political stuff. When I started talking about political stuff, they don't like that anymore. They have the right to leave, which I wish that I had been smarter about how I did things. You know what? That's what I really like about President Donald Trump. He was smart all kind of throughout his life in that he didn't burn bridges unnecessarily. You only fight the people that you're actually in a fight with. You don't go pick fights with people who may or may not be wrong. There was one instance where Trump was talking about Kanye West. And it is so fashionable to hate Kanye West because that guy has gone up against Taylor Swift, who's very popular. And he said, I'm going to let you finish. Beyonce was the best, and you should have been runner-up. And he's done some other things that people call him arrogant for. And I think he is arrogant. But Donald Trump said, I don't have a problem with Kanye. I've never had a problem with Kanye. Meanwhile, Barack Obama called Kanye a jackass, which is like a donkey, but like a jackass, meaning that he was a jerk for pulling that stunt on, what's her name? On that white girl. What's her name? Yeah, Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift won an award, and Kanye wanted the black girl to win, meaning Beyonce. And so he let everybody know that. And for that, Barack Obama called him a jackass. And that may have been warranted because he kind of was. But you'll notice that Donald Trump didn't try to bring anything like that up when he's talking about Kanye West, because Trump knows, he's smart enough to know that you be friends with people, because even your enemies you can be friendly towards. You'll notice he talked very nicely about Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. Should he have done that? Sure, because he needed to make a deal with them. And then when he's in a fight with them, he's in a fight with them. He got in a fight with Mitt Romney, and then he had dinner with him. And then maybe he got in another fight with him. Basically, like, he's a classy person, and he's smart in that you don't fight who you're not fighting. You only fight the people that you are in a fight with currently. And that is a nice example to follow, I think. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about success and what holds people back. And I think that I don't really know, but I know one thing holds people back is fear. If you're not a go-getter, then you're not going to be that successful. And so I it seems like all my life I have been medium good, but not quite on top of what I felt that I should be. For example, when I was in high school, I was a runner, and I was a pretty talented runner because my family forced me to run, and I was kind of natural at it in distance running. But like I became like a head case where I would get nervous or I would go out too hard or too easy. I didn't think that I could power through the pain of running fast and hard all the way through, and just different things happened. And sometimes I got overzealous and would injure myself. So things like that held me back. And I noticed that my other teammates were kind of the same way. Like they were mediocre, where they could have been really good, but they weren't. And then there was another situation where I joined this team called the Chupacabras, and it was a soccer team full of like cross-country guys, people who ran in high school, but then started to play soccer. And we joined a soccer league, and then we got some really good, talented people. And I noticed that like around the same time that I started to do that, I started to pray, like with Jesse's prayer and stuff like that, that quiet meditation thing where you become aware of the present. And when I did that, it felt like I was cooler headed and was less liable to make nervous mistakes, which many people do, and that's called choking. So I would choke, and I noticed that a lot of people, even when they were talented at first, they would score like hat tricks, meaning 3 goals in a game. They started to like mess up. And it's like, what's wrong with the culture of our team, the Chupacabras? Chupacabra is like a Mexican monster, fictional character or fictional animal, I think, that literally translates to goat sucker. So they suck the blood of goats, but we kind of sucked. Sorry for my language again, because that's not a good word to use. I was not raised to use that word. But we have to speak English, right? And then, okay, so that's 2 incidences of like failure or mediocrity. And then I joined this, I started to work. I worked at this play. And this play was put on by a piano teacher of mine, very talented guy. I loved listening to him play piano and sing and all that stuff. You could show him some music and he would just sight read it perfectly. But for some reason that failed too. And then another situation where I joined a small business, a cabinetry company. And I poured myself into this business, into working for it. But there's something about working hard versus working smart. And I don't think I quite worked smart. And it's partly probably because I was not cutthroat enough. I wasn't business savvy. I just poured my time into it, made sure the customers were happy. Probably kind of because I'm like not naturally, but I'm like a people pleaser. And so I want the customers to be happy because I dealt with a lot of angry customers in this business. But this business never rose to the top. It failed. And so I'm like, man. And there was one guy who was really good, but we had one carpenter who was a really talented guy. He was like the number 1 asset to the company. And the people within the company are probably the biggest asset to any given company. And so that thing was another example where it just failed. And fortunately, very fortunately, at the end of my stay there, I pulled all-nighters. I worked 7 days one time, which was like the first time I'd worked even on a Sunday. And I was like, this is too much. I get a call from Jesse Lee Peterson, and he says, do you want to be producer of the Jesse Lee Peterson show? And I was like, let me think about it. And so I thought about it maybe one night or 2 nights, and I said yes. And so basically I quit and I started right away. And so now I am a producer for the Jesse Lee Peterson show. And so now he is like talking about entrepreneurship and building up his own brand and building up the nonprofit organization. And so I want to know, how do you become successful? And I think I know partly what is holding me back is like a lack of dedication to like prayer and all those things. And that stuff, I think that it is like untold, unbelievable, and almost unlimited how much that holds you back versus if you do those, if you really commit to God, for lack of a better word, then I really think that you can really be at least doing the right thing completely without lacking anything. And that would be very, very nice. There's a lot of successful people who don't seek God. I understand that. And they just have that natural thing that you can look at and take lessons from and learn from. So I want to learn to work smart this year. Anything that you guys want to learn this year, let me know. And you can call in at 888-775-3773. 888-77-JESSE. And one of the things that I want to talk about is how I see Jesse Lee Peterson. Because Jesse, to me, like I first heard of him and knew him as, I can't use the words, I don't like the word spiritual leader, but somebody who is smart in terms and right. And I want to say, like, in my opinion, he's kind of like the closest thing to living, one of the closer things to living it. He's like the example, a good example of like a Christian and like a good man. And I've always noticed that Christians tend to be lacking, men tend to be lacking. I myself tend to lack in certain things. And so I wanted to know, for a while, I wanted to know, like, I wanted to get past that issue. And so that's how I came to start attending Jesse's churches. So I knew him through church first. And then he started talking about politics, and generally the politics that he was about agreed with the politics of my father, who's generally a pretty conservative, straightforward, independent thinking, responsible, honorable man. And so I had no problem in general with his politics. One time he said, "We need to kick all the illegals out." And he said that in church. I was like, whoa, maybe he's wrong about that. But he's still right about the spiritual stuff and most of the other political stuff. And so I, one time, listened to Jesse on the radio show debating this woman who's pro illegal immigration, allowing the illegals to stay because they're here, type of thing. And that was my mindset. They're here. Just let them stay. But he said, is it right that these people are coming in, they're taking jobs, many of them are committing crimes, they're displacing blacks from their communities, they are all these things, and they're here illegally. Is that right? And when he boiled it down to that point, and the woman, by the way, absolutely refused to answer. She could not answer it. That was what changed my mind about illegal immigration. And so Jesse boils down politics to a basic right and wrong. But that's not how the world sees Jesse. They see him as like a typical conservative or something, which they see as goofy, which may be partly their fault because they're judgmental people, they're blind, etc. But it may be partly my fault because I help present Jesse to the world. I help do YouTube videos, I help with titles and things like that. And so I want to present Jesse the way he is, as opposed to the way that, something else, something that I believe, or, because I believe a lot of the same stuff Jesse does, but I don't put it the way he does. When I argue the points with people on Twitter or Facebook, for example, or if I argue with some callers. Occasionally they do get on my nerves. Jesse doesn't feel that way about those things, and he doesn't even come at people the same way I do. So I want to do in a way that is fun, because Jesse is very fun-loving, lighthearted, but direct guy. So that's one of the things that I would like to do. And so in the new year, I would like your input. You can email me, james@jesseleepeterson.com or thehakereport@gmail.com. I want to use this show to present something good about Bond, about Jesse. I want to represent those two things, that person and that entity, very well. So I appreciate the constructive criticism that some of you guys have given me over time, and I would really appreciate also some input as far as ideas. Make this better, all that stuff. That's constructive criticism, but it's also like, hey, talk to this guest, or bring in this person, things of that nature. So, Erica Garner, dead at 27. Man, that's kind of sad in a way. 27 years old, and then her father was 43 when he died, and yet they don't really, I don't know. You look at that family, they look unhealthy, and then you look at the way that they talk, at least on Twitter. I saw a couple tweets by them, and it's all about like black issues, which just comes off as hateful, which I guess is the same way that people view white nationalists as hateful. And you don't have to, I don't begrudge people to be into blackness or whiteness or Jewishness or their Asianness anymore. I used to think that was wrong, and I still think it's wrong, but they have the right to be into that, and I don't have the right to hold that against them, because I'm into a lot of stuff. I put like my pride and my identity into like Bond and Jesse, and I get overworked up in a way that Jesse's not, like I kind of just described earlier. So that's one of the things that I wonder if there's a way to awaken myself to like become more clear-minded in the way I present myself, and if there's a way to waken up people like the Erica Garner type family, where something should tell them, okay, 2 people in your family have died prematurely. What could you learn to do better to protect yourself, rather than blaming the country only, blaming cops only, blaming racism only? And I don't know if people are really learning that. It's so weird, because you look at Colin Kaepernick, and Colin Kaepernick is, in my opinion, I'm just guessing, guilt-driven. And I'll say that because I, in the past, have been very guilt-driven, very guilt-driven. I have, like, bent over backwards to help people. When I was in college, I was doing art because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't want to teach, and I didn't want to have to write, even though I'm okay at writing. I started just helping people. And part of that was because I was like, I was not confident. I was kind of shy to socialize with them. So instead, I would just go hang around and just help them. And then also, I was kind of making up for feeling guilty and wrong about how I lived my life. And because, college is a mess. I think college is not wise to get into for the most part, especially if you're just going to do art. But besides that, I had two things going on. One was like guilt at being generally wrong, and so like I made up for it by driving the speed limit and helping people with their art gallery setup, for example. And then I also had this mindset because I'd read the Bible by that point, like read the Bible all the way through, and the Bible says whatever you're doing, put your all into it, which is something a lot of guys and Americans and people in general really resonate with. You put everything into what you're doing. Do it with all your heart or whatever, and do it as unto God or stuff like that. And so that's what I was trying to do, was like, whatever I'm doing, I'm going to do like my best at it kind of thing. But if you're not really a balanced person, if you're not, say if you're reading the Bible but you're not praying, which is what I was doing, or you're praying but you're just like basically venting to God and just treating God as like your diary or your journal, that type of stuff, I lost my train of thought. It basically is a dead end because you're not really balanced, and I want to be balanced. So I think that's one of the things that holds people back. I want to talk a little bit about Roy Moore. Roy Moore ran for office. He was somebody I really respected. He's multiple times elected Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Alabama, and he stood for the Ten Commandments, being a monument to the Ten Commandments remaining on the grounds of the Supreme Court building in Alabama, whereas all the secularists wanted that taken down because Congress shall make no laws respecting the establishment of religion. It's not a law to leave the Ten Commandments there. But anyways, he also stood very strongly, and this is when he really became into my consciousness, for regular, real marriage as opposed to same-sex marriage. Remember a few years back, the Supreme Court said, oh, gays have the right to marry the same sex, and that should be called marriage, and all of that. So they tried to force that on to the states, and the states really don't have to honor that. The Supreme Court doesn't have any say on the definition of marriage, but they tried to force it on to Roy Moore in Alabama, and Roy Moore wouldn't have it. And he had this long debate with Chris Cuomo of CNN, fake news CNN, and it was so interesting because it's such a intellectual question, and he gave a really smart answer that it comes down to natural law. We are under natural law. Our laws are built on God's basic law, the laws that govern nature, and nature's God. So he really laid that out, and I loved that debate. So it was fun to have him on Jesse Lee Peterson's radio show. It was fun to go meet him because Jesse visited Alabama. I happened to accompany him. And so we were able to hang out in Judge Roy Moore's office. And we talked with him at length and talked about the same-sex marriage thing and all that stuff. He gave us some pocket constitutions along with some other chapters that he'd written kind of to accompany it in a little booklet thing. He signed them to me and to Jesse. And he was just a genuine good person, very intellectual and smart on things like that, and very knowledgeable. And so he started to run for senator to replace Jeff Sessions. And he beat Mo Brooks. He beat out that other guy, Luther Strange, who was the attorney general or something like that under the governor, who I believe at least suspected to be corrupt. So Roy Moore went up against Doug Jones, who is a Democrat, pro-abortion guy, basically like disgusting, all the most disgusting policies that you can imagine. He's for them. He's pro same-sex marriage, the transgender stuff, socialism, pushing the false idea of racism and all that stuff. And so they accused Roy Moore. The Washington Post came out with this thing accusing Roy Moore of dating like underage girls. And back then, it may not have been that taboo, but it was. There were some other things that they accused him of that were dirty or disgusting. But basically, even those things were very, very mild. Like he was accused of trying to get a girl to touch him, but then she didn't like it, so he drove her home and left her alone. So like, what the heck? I tend to not believe these accusations. But I mean, it's weird because these accusations play in people's minds, including mine. It's like it feeds that doubt. And that's what liberals and evil people love to do, is play on the doubts and the unknowables of what's going on. That's why they thrive on pushing the climate change thing, the evolution thing, born that way, same-sex marriage type stuff. Are you born homosexual? All these stupid things that are basically irrelevant, but they thrive on giving you this distraction. Oh, they push the racism thing. That's an unknowable thing. What really drives somebody's motivations? Oh, is that racist? So they push all that stuff. And so that's what happened to Roy Moore. And Roy Moore battled it to a point, but he did not successfully overcome, obviously. And they also accused him of being racist because he said that America was great in the past, even though we had slavery, because families were together and they were moral. And that is so true. But the liberals have successfully brainwashed people to believe that slavery was the worst thing America has ever accepted. Meanwhile, they're accepting and promoting abortion. The same liberal media that says, oh, slavery is so bad, they promote abortion. They're for abortion. They're nakedly biased in favor of abortion. They really are. I had this tweet about these several tweets that I did a while back about how CNN pretended to break myths about abortion, saying that, they basically gave the impression, they didn't explicitly say it, they gave the impression that blacks aren't disproportionately committing abortions, that they're saying abortions are much lower than they used to be, which is true, but it's still high. It's still like almost 1 million a year, or something like that. And so the liberal media is so evil, and Roy Moore was not able to overcome that. So is Roy Moore a failure? I don't know. Wouldn't say so, because Roy Moore is like a respectable guy. But he failed where only one person that I know of who's been attacked relentlessly by the media has succeeded, and that is President Donald Trump. I loved how Trump just came at the media. He was very open with the media. He didn't refuse to talk to the media. And you do have the right to refuse to talk to the media, but I think that Trump was maybe smarter than Roy Moore in this sense are we still on? He was smarter than Roy Moore in this sense that he went after the media, and he was very open. And Patrick is saying Roy Moore is not really a savvy politician like Trump, not wise enough in that area. And that's true. There's something about traditional conservative Christians, including Roy Moore, including like maybe myself, including, well, I'm not a politician, but I present stuff to the public and try to gain more audience. And I'm not the most successful person at that if you look at other people whose audiences have exploded. So I would like to see Roy Moore grow from this, which I think he will, because seems like that type of a person. If you look at his past, he's done so much and he's stood his ground. And I don't think that's just because he was in the bubble, so-called bubble of Alabama. I hope and think that he will still be able to. He's going to serve the country in whatever capacity that he can, and serve his, be a leader. And so, did he fail? I don't know. On some level, he definitely did, because he didn't win. And it's not good to not win. But I liked that he took a stand. It was unjust, in my opinion, that they didn't look deeper into the voter fraud thing, because I think the voter fraud is real. But there legitimately are a whole lot of brainwashed, evil-loving voters out there. And so you can't just blame everything on voter fraud. You have to be a persuasive person. You have to awaken people. And that was one thing that Trump really did pretty well. So it is the new year coming up. And I had fun for Christmas, but I was sick all after Christmas until today. I almost didn't even do this show, but I wanted to do it because this is a great opportunity, and why pass it up? You guys are enjoying it, I think. And so I want to talk about what you want for the new year. What would you want for yourself, for Bond, for Jesse, for the church in the new year? I would like for the church to grow, but I would like for more people to become leaders, including myself, because I've been coming to Bond for more than 10 years. I started in February of 2007 coming to Bond, and I started faithfully and more faithfully coming to Bond. They invited me to volunteer. I was working the camera. I remember standing behind the camera when Jesse said the various things that have gone viral. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's interesting. And then not 3 years ago, in October 2013, I started to work for Jesse officially and for Bond as the producer of the radio show. And then a couple years ago, I guess, maybe less than 2 years ago, I started producing the church, making sure that the church went out on YouTube, which is so awesome. I'm so happy that we are streaming live on YouTube for Church with Jesse Lee Peterson, because people are really picking up on that. And that is how, besides the fact of The Fallen State, which is another great addition that has happened in the past couple of years to Jesse's natural talent of being a host, being a interviewer, conversation, breaking things down to basic right and wrong, making stupid and evil people look stupid and evil, and yet all with a smile on his face. That is so nice. And so people have really, we have a lot of new faithful listeners and callers and subscribers and supporters and participants in Bond who help make Bond great. And so that's cool. It's really nice. So I want to make the church grow. And I think that there's ways that I can present YouTube clips and things like that. Facebook clips, I think, have been lacking. I want to really push Facebook, because Facebook is where the people are. Believe it or not, many of the people anyway. Young as well as old. And it attracts a lot of haters, but it also attracts a lot of really good people. So that's one of the things that I want to do. And I think that you guys have been a big help to that. Whoa, you're call. Jesse's here showing me something, or somebody's here showing me something. We have 7 minutes to go, Jesse, and you're giving me something. Give out the call number. Oh, I gave it out like 3 times. 3 times. But you can call in at 888-775-3773, 888-77-JESSE, and it is down on the screen, like right around here somewhere. So you can always call in and talk with me. I'm going to be having some guests. I have been interested in interviewing more of my friends because, like, I want to know. I'm sure that my interview with AJ Gallardo last week caused some drama for himself and some, like, talking about me. And I want to see a little bit more of what gets in between friendships when you talk about politics, when you have friends who are brainwashed to believe in racism and sexism and homophobia and all that stuff, because and this hatred of Trump, which to me is so interesting. For me, I really freaked out under Obama. I talked about this last week. I freaked out under Obama because it was like an awakening that was starting to get into politics, and he was just so wrong and fake. And in some things, like, his lies are so subtle sometimes, and so much of the time he says stuff that's like non-controversial, and he's so wordy that people are like, "What's the problem? I don't understand how you can hate him." Well, I shouldn't hate him anyways, but I did because I hate, and I lost my train of thought. But Mark says we need more fearless speakers to speak the truth, no more feminine men or angry women. And that would be really nice. More fearlessness, less femininity and anger. I got a caller. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Bible Go-To Guy, Los Angeles.
Hey, Bible Go-To Guy, how are you?
Hey, James. You sparked me to realize that when you're talking about the Islamophobism and racism, sexism, all that stuff, what those words represent is special sins that only a certain segment of the population can commit.
Yeah.
What ludicrousy is that? That's just like saying stealing is only something that, or lying is only something that, a certain group can do, a certain ethnicity or a certain sex or...
That's true.
It's insane. It's like special rights for homosexuals or special rights for, special rights comes from the liberal mindset, and so does special sins come from the liberal mindset. These are such special people.
That's a very good point. That's why Jesse asks people who believe in racism, "Are you racist?" And there are many whites out there who will say, because they're so brainwashed, they'll say, "I am racist, but I'm trying to battle my racism," and stuff like that. Yeah. And but most of the time they'll say, "No, I'm not racist." But either way, they're just basically being self-righteous because you're accusing something of something. You're accusing someone or a whole government, in the case of the people who believe in systemic racism, of something that you cannot be guilty of. Whereas if you just call it judgment, are you a judgmental person, or are you a wrongly discriminating type of person, because discrimination is not inherently wrong. That breaks it down to like, okay, you could be just as guilty as I am, or I could be just as guilty as you are. And it shows like a self-righteousness, a lack of humility. And yeah, it's basically, they are what they're accusing you of being in a way.
Yeah. Where is it in Scripture that, it's in the New Testament, of course, where one of the apostles, I think it's Paul, is like, okay, you are preaching against stealing. Are you a thief?
Yeah.
You're preaching against lying. Do you lie? Look at yourself when you accuse others, and you're going to be surprised to learn
Yeah.
that the greatest accusers are the ones who are actually doing it the most. And,
Yeah, that's true.
That's a good way to live.
But say you're stuck in doing like wrong things, like you speak out against like the degenerate culture of like promoting homosexuality and having sex and all that stuff, and yet you're kind of into sex and you're stuck in that situation. Does that mean that you should shut up? I don't think so. I think you should still speak out for what's right, and then just also privately work on yourself. I don't think it makes you a hypocrite to speak out against evil, even though you're still evil yourself.
That's a very good point. It's like two drunks on Skid
We
Row,
should stop
Skid Row
this.
in L.A. Two drunks on Skid Row in L.A. or two drug takers, and one says, two addicts, and one says to the other, you know what? This isn't very good for you. He's telling his partner in drugs, this isn't very good for you. You're ruining your life in drugs. Well, what about you? And so he stays in his drug-infested world, or his alcohol-infused world, even though he was just enlightened by a friend who does the same thing that just can't be that good.
Yeah, that's true.
We're wrong, aren't we?
Well,
We can't stop it, but we're wrong, right? And they don't want to, for some reason, your word is useless because you're in it. And yet there's people who are praised for going through it. You can't know, the best counselors, the counselors are the ones who were addicts themselves, so they can tell you how to get out of it.
I got to get to my next caller, Bible Gucci guy. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Thank you. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Lucan calling from Pomona.
Hey, Lucan. Good to hear from you. How are you doing?
Doing all right now.
Going through
I'll
some
be going to
challenges.
work later today, but I wanted to call in and kind of address something else I noticed about, because we all know that racism, sexism, homophobia, those things being focused on as like the main issue, we all know that's a distraction, that's a false diagnosis, that's symptoms being treated as the root, specifically to manipulate people.
Yeah, that's true.
But there's something else I noticed about that whole thing. You know how you guys keep on mentioning, and this is actually a true thing, that you can't respect somebody, you can't really love somebody if you're not willing to tell them the truth about their problems?
Yeah. That's a good
Why?
point.
And yet, when you talk about what's wrong, what's really wrong in the black community, you're a racist. When you talk about what's wrong with the way that a lot of women are trained to be by today's society, you're sexist.
Yeah.
When you talk about some of the natural pitfalls and problems that go on with the gay community and transgenders and the way that people are being taught to not only tolerate them but accept them and even consider them cool, and the way that ends up destroying a lot of lives.
Yeah. It's a defense
You're
against the
homophobic
truth.
bigot.
Yeah. It's a
So
self-defense
basically-
against the truth, and it shuts you up. Well,
Yeah, exactly.
it doesn't shut some people up, and that's a good thing.
That's absolutely true.
All right.
But the whole thing is they're basically telling you that if you speak up, that makes you the hater.
Right.
But the reality is the hater is the one who lets them drown in their evil without even trying to give them any kind of warning.
So true, Lucan. I appreciate it,
So
Lucan.
when they tell you that you need to shut up or else you're this, that, or the third, what's really going on is by shutting you up, they're turning you into what they're accusing you of being.
Yep.
So
That's
it's
so
a really
true.
evil, twisted, backwards game
Yep.
that's being played.
Well, thank you, Lucan. I gotta go. I appreciate you.
All right.
And thanks for tuning in, and thanks for your input over time. I appreciate it. And I wish you well in the new year. And I hope to see you
Thank
guys
you very
next
much.
week, by the
Happy
way.
New Year to you too.
I hope to see you guys next week. I think the men's forum is happening next week because it's the new year. So the first Thursday of the month is men's forum. So do it, guys. If you're anywhere near LA, try to make it. It's very fun. It's the best. We will be back with Church with Jesse Lee Peterson in less than 1 hour. Thanks, guys. See ya.